The cover of Science, there is the partial skeleton of a remarkable human ancestor. This is Ardipithecus ramidus, and a team of international researchers introduced this hominid, member of the human family, that lived 4.4 million years ago, which is about 1 million years older than Lucy's species, and they flesh it out. And what they are telling us in these 11 articles is that it doesn't look just like us, which is not surprising. You wouldn't invite them to dinner. But it doesn't look just like a chimpanzee either, which is a big surprise. The traditional view for the past 50 years has been that our ancestors arose in the grassy savannas of Africa. This is where Ardipithecus ramidus is so important. At 4.4 million years ago, Ardi shows us a creature that was walking in an intermediate way, developing upright walking, but it's not fully modern yet, and it was living in the woods. It wasn't living in the open savanna, it wasn't using tools, and its brain was the size of a chimpanzee.
It used to be a closed wooded habitat full of monkeys and kudus and with a few Ardipithecus, and 6,000 fossils plus all of the invertebrates and all of the other isotopic data from soils and things like that lead up to the same conclusion. And this is a very different conclusion, I think, than most people expected of the earliest hominids, because many people thought that bipedality and the earliest hominids had evolved in more open savanna settings.
Excavated in Aramis, Ethiopia, Ardipithecus ramidus lived around 4.4 million years ago. We're fairly confident of the dating this time because the fossil sat on top of a layer of volcanic ash which was easily dated. One of the specimens excavated, called Ardi, is truly incredible. It's actually the most complete early hominin ever discovered, more complete than its more famous cousin, Lucy. So what is it about this pile of bones that leads experts to think it was a hominin? Let's start with the head and work our way down. The skull that they found was crushed pretty badly, but they were able to reconstruct it. They found that this individual had a brain size of 300 to 350 cc's, about the size of a chimp, and smaller than Australopithecus and Homo naledi. Its muzzle sticks out quite a bit more than Australopithecus and has an overall primitive look to it, but it's flatter and more human-like than what we see in a chimpanzee. And once again, the foramen magnum is located towards the center of the skull and is not similar to chimps. In terms of teeth, there's no CP3 honing, so that supports its classification as a hominin. And the teeth also reflect a more omnivorous diet than chimpanzees, which mostly eat fruit and leaves. But Ardipithecus wasn't as quite adapted to heavy chewing and abrasive foods like Australopithecus and Homo, sort of in between us and chimps, basically. Let's keep moving down. Overall, Ardi seems to have been about 120 centimeters tall and weighed about 50 kilograms.
Ardipithecus ramidus is one of the earliest ancestors of humans, which lived 4.4 million years ago in the early Pliocene period. The skull has several ape-like features, such as a very low and backward-sloping forehead, distinct brow ridge, and strongly protruding face and a nuchal crest.
The foramen magnum became more centrally positioned over time. This allowed for more efficient bipedal locomotion. This made it easier to balance the mass of the skull over the spine. Earlier hominins had placement of their foramen magnum closer to the back of their skull, such as Ardipithecus ramidus, but later hominins showed a shift of this foramen magnum closer to the center of their skulls.
A very large and robust mandible and rounded chin are also ape-like features. The incisors are large and protrude outwards. The canines are diamond-shaped.
The relative size of canines became smaller over time. This reflects the transition from meat scavenging, which required ripping and tearing of flesh, to hunting, butchering, and cooking of meat. In many species, including chimpanzees, canines are very important in displays of dominance between males, thus providing clues about social behaviour. This trend of less pointed canine teeth suggests reduced conflict between males. Diastema became lost over time because as the canines became reduced, gaps between teeth are no longer needed to accommodate the enlarged lower canines.
The molars aren't particularly small or particularly large. All the teeth appear to be arranged rectangularly.
The arrangement of the teeth, or curvature of the dental arcade, became more parabolic over time. This aligns with the overall reduction in the size of the jawbones, muscles, and teeth. Up until Homo habilis, the dental arcade was still relatively rectangular. From Homo ergaster, there is a shift towards a more parabolic dental arcade.
The shapes of these teeth suggest that Ramidus were most likely omnivores, eating a varied diet of plants, meat, and fruit.